Have you ever felt like you see too much? You notice subtle shifts in people's tone. You replay conversations hours after they happen. You question your own thoughts, your reactions, even your identity. And sometimes, you wish you could just turn it all off. Because the more aware you become, the harder life sometimes feels. Here's something psychology is starting to understand. The people who think the deepest about themselves and the world are often the ones who struggle the most. Not because they're weak, but because modern society wasn't really designed for highly self-aware minds. Today we're going to explore why people who are deeply self-aware often feel overwhelmed, disconnected, or out of place, and why that struggle might actually be a hidden strength. First, we need to understand what self-awareness really is. Self-awareness sounds like a purely positive trait. We're told to reflect on ourselves, understand our emotions, and question our beliefs. And those things are important. But there's a side of self-awareness people rarely talk about. Psychologists sometimes describe self-awareness as a mirror that never turns off. Most people look into that mirror occasionally. Highly self-aware people live in front of it. They constantly observe their own thoughts. Why did I say that? Did I sound awkward? What do they really think of me? Why do I react this way? Their mind becomes both the observer and the observed. And while that can lead to deep personal growth, it can also create something psychologists call metacognition overload, the experience of thinking about your thinking endlessly. Instead of simply living an experience, the self-aware mind analyzes it. Instead of just feeling an emotion, it examines it. Instead of letting a moment pass, it dissects it. And over time, that constant observation can become exhausting. But modern life makes this even harder. Today we live in a world that constantly invites us to reflect on ourselves. Social media doesn't just show us other people's lives. It encourages us to compare our own. Am I successful enough? Am I attractive enough? Am I doing the right thing with my life? For many people, these questions stay on the surface. But for highly self-aware people, those questions can become deep internal investigations. Their mind searches for answers that aren't always clear. Psychologists describe something called the self-discrepancy effect. This happens when we constantly compare three versions of ourselves: who we are, who we believe we should be, and who we wish we were. The bigger the gap between those versions, the more emotional tension we feel. Highly self-aware people often see that gap more clearly than others. They notice where they fall short. They notice their flaws. They notice inconsistencies between their values and their behavior. And that clarity, while powerful, can also create pressure that others don't experience. But there's another reason deeply self-aware people often struggle. They tend to notice things that others overlook. They notice emotional dynamics in conversations. They notice when someone is pretending. They notice when relationships feel shallow. They notice subtle discomfort in a room that nobody else seems to feel. And once you see these things, it becomes difficult to unsee them. Many deeply reflective people start to feel like they don't fully belong anywhere, not because they think they're better than others, but because their inner experience of the world feels different. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as perceptual isolation. It's the feeling that the way you process life internally is different from the people around you. You might still laugh with friends. You might still function normally. But internally, you sometimes feel like an observer watching life unfold rather than someone fully inside it. And that can create a quiet form of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the loneliness of not feeling truly understood. Over time, self-awareness can slowly shift into something else: overthinking. At first, it feels helpful. You replay conversations trying to understand what someone meant. You analyze your own reactions. You imagine different outcomes for decisions you made. Your brain tries to predict, control, and understand every possible scenario. Psychologists call this rumination. And rumination is tricky because it feels productive. It feels like you're solving something, like you're getting closer to clarity. But in reality, rumination rarely produces answers. Instead, it keeps the brain stuck in loops. The same thoughts, the same questions, the same doubts. Research shows that people who ruminate often believe they are being thoughtful or analytical, but what they're actually experiencing is something psychologists call analysis paralysis. The mind keeps searching for the perfect explanation, the perfect response, the perfect decision. But life rarely offers perfect clarity, and the more we chase it, the more mentally exhausted we become. But here's the part that rarely gets talked about. The very thing that makes life harder for highly self-aware people can also become their greatest strength. Self-awareness is the foundation of emotional intelligence. It allows people to notice patterns in their behavior. It helps them recognize unhealthy relationships, gives them the ability to question beliefs they inherited from others, and most importantly, it gives them the ability to consciously change. Many people move through life repeating the same patterns for decades without realizing it. They react automatically. They follow habits they never question. But highly self-aware individuals eventually reach a turning point, a moment where they stop fighting their mind and start understanding how it works. They begin to realize something important. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every emotion needs to be analyzed. And not every moment requires interpretation. Some thoughts are simply mental noise, and peace often begins the moment we stop treating every thought like it needs an answer. If you're someone who thinks deeply, who questions everything, who sometimes feels like your mind never stops observing, there is nothing wrong with you. Your mind isn't broken. It's simply more aware. And awareness can feel heavy at first, because seeing clearly often means noticing things others ignore. But over time, awareness can become something else. Clarity. Because the same mind that once made you overthink everything can eventually help you understand life more deeply than most people ever will. The goal isn't to turn your awareness off. The goal is to learn when to use it and when to simply live. Not every moment needs analysis. Not every silence needs interpretation. Sometimes the deepest wisdom is allowing yourself to experience life without trying to understand every piece of it. And when you finally learn that balance, self-awareness stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming one of your greatest strengths.